Welcome to Beginner's Crochet. When you start crocheting, you obviously need some wool, or as the Americans call it, yarn. And if you look at the thread of your wool, you'll see that there are different thicknesses of thread. Some labels are very helpful. They will say to you, if you're knitting, 4.5 to 5.5 millimeter needles. If you are crocheting, that's the single one. So you can see this thickness requires 5.5 mils. Others are not so helpful. When you look at them, they don't give you very much information at all on the video, on the label. In general, the thinner the wool, the thinner the crochet hook that you need. So your crochet hooks start out being very, very thin, something like this, and usually on the side, somewhere sort of over here, or possibly at the end of the needle, it will give you a sizing of what that particular needle is. So for example, you can see on this one, this is a 20 millimeter hook. This one you can just make out is I hope is a 6 millimeter hook. This one down the bottom here, this I think is a 3.5, something like that. So the thickness of the crochet hook that you use will depend on the thickness of the wool that you use. When you crochet, there are two different types of crocheting that you can do. The one is where you crochet in the round. That would be for creating things like granny squares that can then be stitched together to create blankets, or creating hats, for example, anything that is a rounded object. The other way of crocheting is to crochet in rows like you would knit, and for that the way in which you start will be different. So I'm going to show you initially how to crochet in the straight. With all crochet you need to create a slip knot if you're crocheting in the straight, and following the slip knot you then need to cast on. So there are two ways that you can do a slip knot. The first is using your crochet needle. So you're going to create an X shape like this over your thumb. Then you take your needle, or your crochet hook as it's known. You're going to go underneath one, over the other, and then you're going to lift your needle, and as you lift your needle you're going to slide it underneath the other one like that. Okay, I'll do that again. So we have, and the reason it's called a slip knot, as you can see, is because it comes undone very easily. So X over your thumb, under one, over the other, lift your crochet needle and slide it underneath. You take your thumb out and there is your slip knot. The second technique for creating a slip knot is without your hook. So you put your hook to one side. When you have your wool, you're going to have the short end on one side and the long end that connects to your ball of wool on the other. You're going to fold it over so that the long side, not the short side, is on top. Reach in between, grab the wool, and now as you pull it up, you're going to let go from the bottom so that you create a knot. I'll do that again. Loop over, put your fingers through, grab your wool, and pull tight. Then all that you need to do is to reduce that size by pulling on the long end, and then obviously put your needle in. So you can use whichever technique works for you. When you are crocheting, the rule generally is that the looser it is, the easier it is, certainly to begin with. And again, as a beginner crochet, you want to start with some really thick wool that's much easier to manipulate than thin wool. If you are right-handed, you're going to hold your crochet hook in your right hand. If you're left-handed, you will hold your crochet hook in your left hand. Whichever hand has the crochet hook, the other hand controls the wool, both parts of the wool, so the top and the bottom strand, and that's what creates the tension for you to be able to crochet. This is true whether you are doing granny squares and crocheting in the round, or whether you are crocheting straight rows. So whichever hand is your dominant hand holds the crochet hook, and the other hand, your non-dominant hand, controls the tension of the wool. In terms of how you hold your crochet hook, you could hold it in knife grip or in pencil grip, or any variation that feels more comfortable to you. In terms of how you hold your wool, I tend to wrap the wool around my 4th and 5th fingers. I then use my middle finger to control the tension, and my index and my thumb to control. This is what will eventually become the actual work. The crochet stitches that we're going to work will be on this portion over here. So my middle finger controls the tension there, and my thumb and my index finger control the tension here. This is often one of the most difficult things for people to get right, to be able to control the tension so that it's not too tight, not too loose, particularly for beginners, because your different fingers are doing different things in this hand. When you are learning to crochet, what can be very confusing is the terms. Every type of stitch has a different name, and in addition, the names are the same, but they refer to different stitches depending on whether you are in the US or the UK. So if you're going to look at crochet websites, make sure that you know whether it's a British website or an American website, because the way the terms are used is different. Don't pull too tight. You really want a nice big gap in your stitch. Okay, that's where we're going to stitch into later on. And again, using thicker wool to begin with is much easier when you're learning than to use thin wool. All right, so we're going to cast on now. Yarn over, and it's called yarn because, you know, Americans. So we yarn over. You can see that there's a groove on the crochet hook over there. That's where you want your wool to end up. And you do that by a combination of twisting your hand and rotating the hook. So you're going to yarn over, and as you pull your hook down, you can see that the wool is sliding into the groove, and you're going to go through the gap in the bottom stitch. Okay, again, yarn over. As I pull down, the wool goes into the groove, and you pull your hook through. Yarn over and pull through. Notice every time that I'm moving my fingers up along the work, that is to ensure that I've got the correct tension. Yarn over and pull through. And the wool is just sliding through my fingers. It's my middle finger that is controlling, in combination with my pinky finger, how tight and how quickly the wool is pulled through from the ball. Okay, so you can see as I pull on my needle to loosen the tension, my middle finger relaxes, my middle finger tightens up and lifts up in order to create greater tension. Okay, so that's how you control the tension of your work. All right, so we yarn over and pull through. Yarn over and pull through. This is called the chain stitch because all you are doing is creating a chain of very simple loops. They're not even really stitches. These are just loops. Okay, so yarn over and pull through. Yarn over, pull through. So that creates a chain. There you can see the chain of stitches. Now that we have a chain, let's just look at the different parts of this chain. So to start with, we've got this stitch that is actually on the hook, and then you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 stitches, or what will be 12 stitches. And then right at the end, obviously, is the slip knot that we created at the very beginning. That is not a stitch. You do not stitch into that one. How do you identify the stitch? You identify it by this V shape that you can see there. Now, once you've done 1 or 2 rows, those stitches won't lie flat like this along the thing. They will actually lie across the top of your work. And I'll show you what we mean when we get there, or when we go into any stitch. You should be able to see that there are little holes in the middle of my chain loops. Okay, those are the holes that we want to crochet into. So that's what you're looking for every time. My crochet hook, I'm going to skip this first one. We're going to go into the second one. Yarn over. The wool goes into the groove and you pull through. So now I have 2 stitches on my hook. You only ever want 1 unless you are doing a special type of crochet called Tunisian. So what we're going to do now is we're simply going to slip through. So again, there's a hole in the bottom here, right? There's a hole there. That's where the crochet hook is going through, and we're going to pull this top stitch through that hole in that one, like so. Again, into the hikey, into the hole, yarn over, pull through, and then we're going to pull through that second stitch as well. Into the hole, yarn over, pull through, pull through. We're going to do that all the way down. in, yarn over, pull through, pull through. Okay, yarn over, pull through, pull through. Okay, now there you can see I'm in my last stitch, and there is the slip knot at the bottom. We do not sew into the slip knot. When you get to the end of your row, you need to now go up a level, as it were. So there's, you know, the ground floor, and now you want to go up to the first floor. In order to get up to the first floor, you need to add another chain stitch over here. So that's what we're going to do now. Grab my wool, and I simply chain stitch. There's nothing that we're going into. We simply yarn over and pull through. Okay, that's my chain stitch. Now if I put the work down, you can see that naturally the work wants to lie to the right in the direction of my hook, and the yarn that's coming from the ball is lying to the left. We need to turn this around like so, and now we're going to crochet into the back of the stitches that we've just created. Now when you do this, there are 3 different ways that you can do this. There you can see half the stitch, there's the other half. So now you can see the V's that I was talking about earlier. There's a V, that's 1 stitch. There's the second V, second stitch. Okay. So when you are crocheting, you can either go through there and you've got the whole stitch on your hook, both bars. Okay, there's the front bit, there's the back bit. So I can actually pull them apart for a bit on the hook so that you can see, right? There's the 2 portions. Or, so I can either do that, go underneath that stitch and use the whole stitch, or when I put my hook in, I could just do the front bar, or I could just do the back. And the patterns that you follow will tell you what to do. So if they only want you to do the 1 bar, let's say the front, they will say crochet through the front of the stitch, or crochet through the back of the stitch. If they don't tell you front or back, then you need to do the whole stitch like that. And the reason for that is that you get different patterns using the same stitch. You get variations on a theme. All right, for now what we're going to do is we're going to do the whole stitch. So you're going to go underneath the stitch. Okay, if we look from the side, you can make out there is the hole, there's the hole, there's the hole, there's the hole. Okay, so you can just see the holes sitting at the bottom there. Okay, and when you put your crochet needle through, make sure that you're not just going through the front like that, but that you're actually getting the whole stitch on your crochet hook. My apologies, there. Okay, so you don't just want to go through the front of the stitch, you want to make sure that you go through underneath the whole stitch. All right, we're going to go through in this first stitch. You can see I've got both front and back portion of the stitch on the needle. Yarn over, pull through, and pull through. Go in from the back. Most patterns require you to skip this first stitch and to go directly into the second stitch, but again, follow the pattern that you are given. So if we go into that second stitch, okay, you can see there I've only now got the front portion of the stitch. I need this back portion as well. I need to go underneath the whole stitch. There we go. So I've got front and back portions on the needle, on the hook. Yarn over, pull through, and then pull through again this one. You only ever want, at the end of a stitch, you only ever want 1 loop on your needle. Pull through, pull through. Okay. Now if you look at this last stitch, you can see that the last stitch is actually sitting over around the corner here. So it's actually lying over here rather than lying across the top there. You want to make sure that you grab that stitch. Don't miss it out because you think it's part of the bottom. Okay, so we're going to go through both loops, and you can see the second loop is lying right at the back. Okay, so there I've got both loops on now, yarn over, pull through, and pull through. Okay, that is the end of the second row. But now in order to go up to the next level, I need to chain one. So it's like casting on. Okay, check your tension, yarn over, and just pull through. Once you've done that, you are then going to turn your work again, so that now you're facing the front of your work again. And repeat. Okay, here we are at the end of the row. There is my last stitch. Okay, don't now think that this stitch sitting over here on the side, that's the last stitch. It isn't. Remember, this is the forward row. You can see very clearly there is the second row that we did. But the last stitch for the top row is now sitting there. Okay, there are my two. Let's just get the whole thing in. Okay, there are my two loops, front and back loop, okay, of that stitch. Yarn over, pull through, and pull through. If I put it down, you should see that the edges are relatively nice and neat. Okay, remember at the end of the row, you want to chain one. Okay, that gives you the height to the next row. Again, turn and repeat. Okay, so there we are at the end of the row, and again add my chain stitch and turn. Okay, I'm now going to show you a slight variation. Right, so the variation looks like this. Into your work, yarn over, pull through the work. Now instead of going through that second loop, you're going to yarn over again, and now you're going to pull it through both of those stitches at the same time. Into your work, yarn over, pull it through, and now yarn over again and pull through both stitches. Into your work, yarn over, pull it through, yarn over again, and pull through both. This one is called, in the US, the single crochet, and in the UK, the double crochet. So the previous one was called the single crochet in the UK because you only yarn over once. Double crochet because you yarn over a second time to pull through, which is why I prefer the UK terms, because it actually tells you what's going on. Go through the work, yarn over, pull it through, yarn over again, pull through both. Through the work, yarn over, pull it in, yarn over again, pull through both. Alright, so there we are at the end of a row. Again, you are going to do a chain stitch to get to the next level and turn it round and repeat. Can you see the high key there? Okay, that's what we're aiming for, that little hole. Okay, that's where you're stitching, so that you get both bars of that stitch, or both loops of that stitch. There's the front loop, there's the back loop. Okay, you want both loops on your hook. All right, there we go at the end of that one, and we're going to chain and go up. Here you can see quite nicely now, zoom in a little bit, you can see quite nicely now the difference that an extra yarn over creates. So here you can see there are 2 portions to this stitch, whereas here there was only 1 portion to that stitch. Hence this is the double crochet, and this would be the single crochet, except that's confusing with the US. Anyway, so in US this is a single crochet, in the UK this is a double crochet. Go figure. Okay, so there I am at the end of that row, and again chain before you turn. So this is what the front of our work looks like. Okay, so you've got, here was what we call your foundation row. That was where we chained all those stitches, and then these are the rows where we did the single crochet, and then here we started the double crochet. So that's 1 stitch, that is 1 stitch. So there you've got 1 row, there's the next row. So this was the forwards row, this was the backwards row, okay, on the front of the work and the back of the work. All right, so let's say we've now got to the end of the number of rows that we want to do. How do I finish off? Finishing off is very simple. Okay, so we're in this position here now where we've just finished off. Instead of now doing this and carrying on, okay, so putting on my chain, excuse me, putting on a chain, I am going to chain, but I'm going to first cut my wool, leave a tail. It's really important to leave a tail, okay, and then I'm simply going to keep pulling on that chain, pull, 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 pull through, and pull tight. And essentially we've got another slip knot that we've created over here, and there is my work. With crochet, we never cut off at this point because the wool will come unraveled, and because essentially all we're doing is looping the wool in order to create the stitches, this whole thing will unravel. So you don't ever cut your wool over there, you always leave a tail. And now what you're going to do is you're going to now weave this tail into your work, however you want to do it. So what I like to do is to start from where I think I'm going to finish. Okay, I yarn over. So you can see my hook is now all the way through my work. I think this is where the tail is going to end up. Okay, I've yarned over, and now all I'm going to do is pull, pull, pull. This. There I am, yarn over. You can do it 1 stitch at a time if you find that easier. I just am lazy, so I try and do it all in one go. Okay, straighten it up again. So there you can see I've now woven this tail into the work. Okay, you can continue going if you want to weave it in this way and then this way around or whatever, up to you. I could then cut that off at that point, safe in the knowledge that it's not going to unravel. Your tails, so there's another tail over there, your tails are quite useful if you are creating a piece of work that is made from lots of smaller pieces, and then you keep really long tails and you use the tail. So this tail I would weave into the next piece to stitch these 2 together, and so I would weave between the 2 all the way up, creating a kind of ladder between the 2, and that will then weave the 2 pieces to each other. Again, there are a whole lot of different patterns that you can use and different ways in which you can weave different pieces together. You could even use a completely different wool with a different thickness or a different color to create a contrast and a really lovely pattern.